Okay.
Welcome to Planetary Health First, Mars Next. It is going to be an amazing journey today. Hope you are ready for liftoff. We are live now.
Well, this is awesome. Oh, so glad to have Tom Kluz here, special guest on Planetary Health First, Mars Next Live. My name is Michael Mann. I'm the host. I'm also the managing director of DeSanti when I'm not doing planetary health, trying to blast off to Mars. And Tom is a special guest, perfect for this. It's almost like this show, it was not invented for Tom, but all of what he's doing from clean tech, health tech, biotech, all the VC endeavors of the capital stacks that he's looking at. I feel like the name of the show almost takes his breadth and depth of what his investment portfolio looks at. So Tom, with that intro, could you give us a little bit about what you do and what you're up to, just to give our guests a little bit about who you are?
Sure, absolutely. Michael, thanks for having me on this show. I'm really excited to be here, very privileged to be here. Just some context, Klaus is my German name. The way you pronounce my last name is Kluz. I go by Hey You and Tom, but for those of you that know me, my name is Tom Kluz. Been doing corporate venture capital for the last, call it 12 years. Prior to that, was in financial investing. So I worked at a financial venture capital firm. Academically trained as a biomedical engineer, went into college with the expectation that I would go to medical school. Parents were motivating me to be a doctor. I come from an immigrant household, so it was always doctor or lawyer were the only two professions that were viable. But I decided to become a biomedical engineer because I really enjoyed building things, right? I saw the tech boom. I was going to college during the bubble, and I saw the promised land. I saw what was going on in Silicon Valley, or read about what was going on in Silicon Valley, and I wanted to build things. So I decided to study biomedical engineering, got into the research side of things, got pretty plugged into some research projects in undergrad and graduate school, but really decided that business was more of my cup of tea. So to speak. So I was fortunate enough to get a job at a tier one venture capital private equity firm called Adam Street Partners. Cut my teeth into the industry. Got to work with some really, really intelligent folks there who taught me and showed me the ropes. And after that, went off to start a company. Started a cancer diagnostic business with a former professor of mine. He was a mentor of mine, was doing some work in light scattering spectroscopy to detect cancer. And so really got fascinated by that, helped grow the business, raise some money. And eventually we sold that business to a multinational. And then after that, got onto the buy side. So I've been in corporate venture now for like I said, over a decade. Worked at a fund called Providence Ventures, which was the corporate venture arm of Providence St. Joseph Health, one of the nation's largest healthcare systems in the country. I believe it's third or fourth largest nonprofit healthcare system, and was fortunate enough to really learn the ins and outs of the healthcare ecosystem. I then wanted to step outside of that and be more of a technology generalist. So cut my teeth into technology investing at Qualcomm Ventures. Was wearing my healthcare hat, so I led global healthcare investing for Qualcomm, but I also got to do deals in and around that sector. So I did deals outside of healthcare, looked at deals in the space tech space, certainly in the enterprise software space and in the consumer space. So really, really fortunate to have been trained in technology investing there. And then in the last almost 3 years now, I've been at a fund called Natera Ventures, which is the global corporate venture arm of Natera Global, formerly known as NGK spark plugs. You will note NGK spark plugs as one of our solid state batteries was launched into space by a SpaceX rocket, which was pretty cool. So if you go back to some of the SpaceX rocket launches, they give us a major shout out, and we're really proud of that. It was a pretty cool technology. I think, Natera, I'm very fortunate to be at Natera. It's a really special place. I'm investing capital off of Natera's balance sheet in partnership with a group called Pegasus Tech Ventures. Pegasus Tech Ventures is investor in SpaceX and Instacart and really some world-class technology companies. And then they're really helping us take our corporate venture program to the next level. We've been fortunate to invest capital in kind of three areas. One is the mobility space, so kind of stepping outside of Natera's core business. Natera's core business is the spark plug. So we manufacture, make tons of money manufacturing and distributing spark plugs to internal combustion engines. And then we also sell an oxygen sensor alongside that. We also have a ceramics business that makes the insulator for both the sensor and the spark plug. And so when you think about it, that ceramics business has empowered us to enter a lot of different verticals. Anything from battery production to energy distribution to the solar ecosystem, and then most recently the medical space. We've been really excited about what's been happening in medical. Our oxygen sensors are used in healthcare today. They're used in oxygen concentrators, and so for us, it makes sense to kind of build on that competency. So we definitely invest money in the medical space, and then the last area that I haven't touched on is just energy and environment. So we're very bullish on real social impact. Natera holds itself to a high standard when it comes to sustainable manufacturing, and as a result, we hold ourselves very accountable to deploying capital in a socially responsible way into companies that are making a major impact in sustainable energy creation, sustainable food production, and then all that sort of wrapped under the what's our core competency umbrella. So anyway, that was a long intro about myself, but I wanted to give you and your viewers a little bit of context of my background.
Yeah, no, that was great, Tom. That was extremely helpful, the depth and breadth and kind of where you came from. I think the story of as an immigrant, parents saying, never do anything what you're doing, be a doctor, a lawyer, security, and it sounds like you were you have an entrepreneur, but you landed safe because you were able to do what not too many are able to do. And I imagine, successfully with your background in bio and, as a scientist, researcher, you were able to create a product and sell it and exit. And gosh, that's what has allowed you to be not all VCs are founders. So that I'm sure really helps, but that was a great background. Definitely gave me a lot of thinking with some questions to follow up with you on that. And I guess what I'm curious about is, how did you segue from being a founder to getting into VC? What was that transition like?
No, it's a great question. It's interesting. I actually, interestingly enough, transitioned from investing to being a founder, and the challenge for me was, do I go back to VC and what do I sort of value, right? And then what aligns with my professional interests? I think what I discovered, I'd say venture was my segue into the startup universe, and then I realized I really enjoyed startups, but I didn't know whether I enjoyed working with multiple startups at the same time, or if I wanted to, call it jump into a single startup and help build out from the ground up. And, what I discovered in that process of being focused on one startup company is that it was very rewarding. It's going really deep into a specific domain. You really become a master of that. It's like Malcolm Gladwell's Outliers, right? 10,000 hours to develop competency into something. So I think, it takes years to build a startup and see it from soup to nuts. However, from a risk tolerance perspective, I felt like being focused on one particular thing was a bit much for me. And I learned valuable things as a founder and an operator, but I wanted to share that knowledge. So I really enjoy people. I enjoy a variety of different technologies. Again, an engineer by training. So I think for me, what really, I'd say, motivated me to do that shift outside of the exit was the fact that I don't want to just work on one particular thing. I want to work with multiple startups at the same time and essentially manage a portfolio of companies.
How many companies are you managing actively, if you're able to say at this point?
Sure. It's probably right now sort of 7 to 8 companies, right? So I'd say 4 or 5 of those are board seats that require a lot of sort of day-to-day or regular accountability, right? I mean, our whole portfolio, I run the investment team globally, so I'm accountable for the whole portfolio. But at the end of the day, there's some more passive investments we've made, and then there's some where we're on the board and they take up most of our time. So yeah, it's about 7 to 8. I'd say 4 that I'm deeply plugged into at the moment.
That's awesome. And so when you do that, I imagine, so it's definitely meeting weekly is the cadence, or definitely a monthly for the big board meetings, but how do you interface to keep, I know you're reading a lot, study, the product. Can you unpack that as best as you can without giving away proprietary secrets?
Of course. Yeah, I think it depends on the founder. Some founders embrace their board, they embrace their investors, and they make a point to meet more regularly. So I try not to be obtrusive. I want to be value added. That's me as an investor. I'm still learning. I'm still new in this industry and very humbled by how intelligent people are in this industry. So for me, it's really about how can I add value to you, not we have to meet at a certain cadence. So I can think of one portfolio company I can give a little bit of a shout out to. It's a company called Neoplas, which is the device is right here, actually. Shameless plug. But it's a
why not? Go ahead.
It's a medical device that emits an argon-based cold plasma. So it's a non-thermal plasma that's being used for wound healing, given its antimicrobial properties. And so think about something like this. Can be used on Mars, on the moon, right? It has, it emits a pressurized plasma. It's non-thermal and can be applied anywhere. It's pretty cool. So we're thinking about this from the standpoint of how does Natera work more closely with this company on sensor collaboration, manufacturing collaboration, and distribution collaborations. So we're working with this company pretty regularly. We're in the midst of kind of going back and forth on, creating a deal construct with the company for further investment. So right now it's like a couple times a day, we're done.
Yeah. Is the target population diabetes? Is it those with diabetics, or is it wounds? Is that what it's geared towards?
It's a great question. Yeah. So, there's 2 types of wounds. There's acute wounds and chronic wounds. I would say the bigger part of our addressable market is both, but chronic wounds are the sweet spot, right? Those are when I think about this, my grandfather had diabetes. He had a pressure ulcer. It broke my heart to see him deal with that pressure ulcer. He couldn't shake it. He took antibiotics, they put ointments on it, it didn't work. And so there's a subset of these chronic wounds because you're diabetic, because you have COPD. It's harder for those wounds to heal. And because you're older people don't heal as quickly. So I think this becomes a solution for those individuals and candidly provides a healing to some of the suffering these people are going through.
Mm-hmm. Cool. Well, what is it? Tell me you and what you do. What do you delight? What's your delight in your role? Tell us kind of your frame of mind. I'd love to know that.
Sure. Delight, it's I think it kind of boils down to what I mentioned earlier. I think I just love I feel so privileged to be doing this work. I really am. This is my dream job. I can honestly say that. I feel fortunate to be able to say that because my parents were, relatively blue collar workers. They went to work, they did the grind to put food on the table. But I've been fortunate enough where I just love what I do and I don't feel like I'm working, right? So I can do it around the clock. But I think what keeps me going is the people around me, right? So I love the team that works with me at Terra, my colleagues in Japan. We are a Japanese-based company. I love the Japanese culture, and that keeps me grounded, motivated, and process-oriented. While at the same time, my entrepreneurs are just they're moving so fast, and they're so motivated by the innovation cycle. There's nothing holding a startup back, right? And so I'm just really empowered by that mixture of cultures, right? Grounded by my CVC, but also motivated and feel like I'm part of the journey with the entrepreneur.
Awesome. What is the process for your firm with deal flow? How does that work? I know that's the hardest thing. How many pitch decks that go through firms? Give us a little bit of a thought with your firm and how that works.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, every firm is different. We get deal flow from kind of three different areas, right? So number one, people can submit their business plan on our website. They can email me on LinkedIn. I try to be really good about that. I think I remember doing cold emails to folks, to investors when I was an entrepreneur, and I really respected the investors that returned my message. So I get a lot of deal flow just from the outside, but I also get a lot of deal flow from my network, and a lot of that network was other entrepreneurs as well as investors. So other entrepreneurs I've backed, as well as other investors I've done deals with. So I get inbound from that. And then, last but not least, we get a lot from just trade shows, conferences, and proactive outreach from our business units, right? Our business units love startups. It's so amazing. We have such vibrant culture in Japan. Our engineers are rock stars, and they stay on top of, what's the latest solid state battery technology, and they'll send us deal flow all the time. And so, tactically, we look at deal flow in real time. We have a weekly meeting to talk about deal flow. We review all the deals, no stone left unturned, but we only talk about the ones that really fit our criteria or get us really excited, right? Mm-hmm. And so, we have some kind of fundamental criteria for what fits, and as a result, really double down on that.
Can you tell us a little more about your firm's actual thesis? I know you talked a little bit before we jumped on. You're doing clean tech. I even saw decentralized utilities. That sounds just like what Elon Musk dreams of. Yeah. Tell us a little bit about that, kind of your research that you do with it, kind of what your firm's doing to keep it on top of that. I'd love to hear about that.
Sure. That's why we love investing, because it's really it's primary research on steroids, right? Mm-hmm. So we really are able to be out there, and our broader Nitera Ventures ecosystem includes a group called the Venture Lab, and the Venture Lab is actually building companies in-house. They realize that the best way to build a company in-house is in partnership with startups. So they're very, very partnership centric. And so as a result, my investment model will come back to the Venture Lab when there's a project bubbling up that's high priority, and I find an investment target that is synergistic with that, right? So I think, our process is really, at least from my perspective, is very much looking at the capital markets, looking out externally to see what's getting funded, what's taking off, what business models are really working, and centered around those technology moats, and then taking our core competency and trying to marry that up with the external market. So, and I mentioned our 3 pillars at a high level. Maybe I'll sort of unpack them a little bit more. So we've got the mobility side, we've got medical, and then we've got energy and environment. So decentralized utilities was actually kind of our old terminology for that. I'll start with that since we're on that topic. But our thesis for energy, environment, and decentralized utilities is that there is just that utility energy consumption or energy production and storage is getting closer to the consumer. So it's getting, it's like Powerwall, for example, right? You have a Powerwall in your house that allows you to be self-sufficient for quite a bit of time if you've got a solar package going on in your house, right? And so we're big believers in that. We're big believers that the key to creating a more sustainable environment and sustainable energy consumption, you need a decentralized utility construct, right? And we're a ceramics business, so we can play in a lot of those wheelhouses. As a materials company, we can do a lot of things. We can manufacture products and devices that are necessary to get that done. We can also use sensors to get that type of technology out there. And in terms of the types of sensors that we like to, so we are a sensor company at our core. But reality is those sensors are not worth anything unless you have software that connects them, collects data about what's going on, right? So you need the grid will thrive off of a decentralized sensor network with a 5G/software constructs that aggregates all that information. That's a big part of our thesis there. On the mobility side, we see internal combustion engine. It's a gift that keeps on giving. It's not shrinking at the rate that I think we all expected it to. But part of the reason for the formation of Natera Ventures is the reality is that the market is shrinking. Over the next 30, 40 years, that market will shrink. Electric vehicles, other forms of transportation are evolving. We're big believers in hydrogen, right? Nuclear is a big part of our thesis, right? It's a little more difficult in mobility, but it can get there. But hydrogen, we're really bullish on that, and we're developing internal technologies to help address that. And then on the medical side, it's really a natural extension of what we see in society. So we see that in Japan, you've got an aging population. I think nearly 50% of Japan's population will be over the age of 65 and over the next 40 to 50 years. Don't quote me on that exact stat, but it's somewhere in that direction. And what happens when you age? You develop more comorbidities, right? Develop COPD. You develop cardiac issues. You develop neurological issues, central nervous system issues, right? And so, and then these the wound healing technologies that we're currently building in house, that lends itself to to an aging population, because as people get older, their skin gets more fragile, right? So that's really our strategy there. And healthcare is interesting because it can really connect all three. We'd love to invest in a company that connects all three of those aspects, right? So, and I think there's a really far out white space opportunity for us, and a company out there that will connect the dots on all three pillars. We just haven't found one yet.
And you got your background at Providence and Qualcomm makes you really you've been working on this, and so I would love for you to say those three pillars again, and what companies are out there, because I imagine, I would hope to think at some point through this being publicized that some founders out there. So I think this is really well worth kind of driving a little deeper on those three pillars, and those that if there's a magical company founder out there right now that we could hone in and signal them here.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think it's really interesting. So I'll start with kind of the medical space. I think medical has been a really interesting thesis area that we've leaned hard on because we made 2 acquisitions in healthcare companies. So we have really a leg to stand on there. And our core technology for both of those businesses are oxygen therapy and then cardiorespiratory diagnostics. And so we continue to sort of build on top of that. I think some 2 rock star companies that I'm really, really bullish on, and I'm slightly partial to this, are number one, AliveCore. This kind of connects both my universes from Qualcomm to Natera. So I was an investor in AliveCore when I was at Qualcomm Ventures, and we are now an investor at AliveCore here at Natera. And my thesis was interesting. There were different theses, but same outcome, right? So my thesis at Qualcomm was, hey, AliveCore is a mobile device. It's a mobile 6-lead EKG, soon to be a 12-lead EKG, and it's very consumer focused. It's democratizing access to cardiac. So the democratizing part is very relevant to my current thesis because we see it with an aging population. To scale healthcare, you need to deliver more care in the home, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's a big part of our thesis. And then the other side of that from the Qualcomm angle was, hey, mobility, bring your own device, medical IoT, right? Everything is, as you start to see people have different sensors that track different biometric data, all of that data gets connected to the network. And if you connect that, you can effectuate a remote patient monitoring ecosystem that would be very efficient. That also portends well for delivering more scalable care in the home, right? So different viewpoints, but all resulting in the same thing, which is, AliveCore is just giving people life-saving technology more accessibly, right? So it's more accessible to patients. You don't have to go to an ER and pay thousands of dollars to get an EKG, right? You can get a clinical grade EKG in your home. So I'm really bullish on that. Another company I'm really bullish on is Dispatch Health. We invested in Dispatch a bit ago now, almost a year ago. And what I love about Dispatch is it's not just, so it's mobility meets healthcare. So it's a clinician in a car drives to your home and delivers clinical grade care that you wouldn't otherwise be able to get in the home, right? So, a really good example of this is, my grandfather, he got a urinary tract infection, right? And so he got a urinary tract infection near end of life. And, we couldn't get him to the ER in time due to some logistical challenges. And, he got sepsis because of that, right? So with the Dispatch model, it's amazing. You can send a doctor or nurse practitioner into the patient's home. They show up. They've got all the diagnostics ready. They've got a CLIA certified lab that's decentralized, so they can, have you take the appropriate test and then get you your test results within a few minutes. To be honest, right? Within less than 30 minutes, you'll have a diagnosis of a UTI, and they can prescribe you the drugs you need, the amoxicillin or the antibiotics you need right there on the spot. So that to me is the future of healthcare, right? It's shifting as much of that care into the home. And with mobility, right, it's I think there's a couple of things going on here, right? Obviously, I think micromobility around smaller electric vehicles. These are things that we're seeing really, really take off, sort of leapfrog. There's tons of companies in that space. I wouldn't point us in one particular direction just yet, but we're actively looking or having conversations with a company that we think is rock star. It's early still in our process, so I'd rather not share.
You can't tell us, right?
Otherwise, they're going to get another 100 term sheets. So I want to
exactly. Rightfully so. If you want to drive up the
Just kidding. We love our investors. We love co-investing. So I'm happy to talk offline about it. But But that's a really important piece of this. And then I think the other part of mobility that's really interesting is reinventing car ownership for everyone, right? So there's a company we invested in called Car Magic. The CEO of that company is a gentleman by the name of David Sturtz, former founder of Carvana. Really great person, really smart, proven entrepreneur in this particular segment. So there's a lot we can learn from him. And he built this company that we invested in called Car Magic, and it's taking all the sort of convolutedness associated with getting your car fixed through a warranty coverage, trying to extend that warranty coverage past a certain point in time once the car has mileage. And what it does is it transforms that into a subscription grade service. So we find that a lot of our consumers that own vehicles don't mind paying a monthly payment and would not mind buying the car outright with monthly payment that covers all of their bases, their insurance, their motor club, and the sheer ownership of the vehicle. So I think that that company, it's early days for them, but I really think it's going to take off, and it's applicable to sort of other areas, right? But yeah, those are some of the companies we're looking at. We're taking a long, hard look at companies in the hydrogen space. Really just getting into hydrogen distribution. I think one of the areas we're really doubling down on is this notion of how do you transport, because the hydrogen molecule is really small. It's everywhere. It's everywhere. So it's not even a question of can you extract it, right? I mean, I'm sure there's some scientists out there that might question this. My knowledge on this is limited, but from my conversations with really smart entrepreneurs, it's clear hydrogen is everywhere, and we just need to figure out a economically sustainable and energy sustainable way of extracting it. So the production part I'm not as nervous about, but it's the distribution of it that gets me nervous, because it's a small molecule, with just a very run-of-the-mill sort of distribution system using piping. That's dangerous. That is very dangerous and can cause a highly explosive scenario that we want to avoid. And so I think there's real opportunity there for using, whether it's ceramics or a materials play or a physics play. And so we're actually in conversations with an entrepreneur who is exploring that, and he's got a few ideas. And once we're ready to talk about it publicly, I'll come back to you and give you a heads up. I think this company, it's early, but I think they're really onto something.
Cool. I'm excited to hear that. I think the little I know, I think when I've watched stuff on space, like NASA, that's taking, they're able to take all the water and create oxygen. I mean, all the oxygen that people are breathing, and they're creating water, and vice versa. I mean, I'm sure there's technologies, capacities out there that just need to be reimagined, and hydrogen's one of them. So, can you tell, I guess you probably would want to be really a little more careful with talking too much with what you're talking with the inventor, the founder, but just in general for our audience, I think there's a lot of misconception with hydrogen. Maybe if you could just give a general understanding of the potential application, not to give away, this founder's idea or your.
Yeah. I mean, look, hydrogen, there's lots of challenges with it. I think the benefit of hydrogen, I drove in a hydrogen car. It's super clean, right? I mean, when you talk about clean energy, it's super clean. And once it's developed, it's super efficient. You get good sort of mileage for the dollar, right? I mean, right now the price point on hydrogen is quite high because it's in limited supply. But once you figure it out at scale, it's actually really makes a lot of sense to me, right? And again, everything has a hydrogen molecule on it, right? So it's like, okay, from a chemistry perspective, it makes sense. Hydrogen's everywhere, right? So how do you pop those off in an efficient manner and produce a sustainable fuel? That's a major challenge right now. So the energy production, energy in versus energy out, that is a challenge right now,
Mm-hmm.
right? But I know there's some really, really smart people working on this. There's a company called Monolith that raised lots of money, $364 million, at least from what I can tell online, that's looking to, proprietary access to clean hydrogen sources, right? So, they've clearly got some kind of secret sauce in the hydrogen production side of things. Again, economic sustainability around that is a challenge, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
The other challenge is storage, right? So there's a really big facility, and I'm blanking on the name, but there's a big facility, underground facility in Utah that that stores hydrogen. And I'll have to look it up, but
Mm-hmm.
they gave a talk. So some individuals are collaborating with that facility, gave a talk at one of our events. So we had a mobility event a few months back. I'll invite you to the next one so you can attend. And this woman gave us a great speech on hydrogen storage and distribution challenges, right? And so my understanding of the storage piece is it's hard. You have to store it at 0 Kelvin, right? So it's pretty brutal. It's pretty brutal, and that takes up energy, right? So there's a again, a thermal issue, and an energy storage issue, right? And economics with that.
And that sounds like the biggest challenge with the nuclear propulsion, with rockets using nuclear, right? I mean, don't they have to store it at something crazy, even beyond colder than that, like 375? I don't know. My math's not good at that, but
yeah.
I'll save it to someone way smarter than you. Huh?
Yeah.
Do you want to get into some of the nuclear stuff? Is there anything that you guys are looking at that? I would find that's fascinating.
Yeah, the nuclear stuff, that's the one area that we're super early on in terms of our thesis on that. So it's not a fully baked thesis and anything to be sharing. I mean, all these thoughts are my own anyways, but
okay.
It's the one area I'm probably weakest in.
Okay.
But it's fascinating, and it's really interesting. I mean, look, Bill Gates, did a documentary on it. Really, Bill Gates is just an intuitive, very smart person, and he's bullish on it. I think there was some, there were some technological gaps that we hadn't addressed about 30, 40 years ago that caused things like Chernobyl, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that sent some fear into the public eye. It's almost like nuclear's almost been this like faux pas in the public domain. And even when I mentioned to my parents, I'm like, nuclear, they freak out. Like, they think they're Eastern Europeans, and they're like, Chernobyl, oh my God, And so it's almost like that's the challenge. Everything kind of boils down to geopolitics and politics. And, as political agendas are what driving some of the clean tech policies going on today, which I'm a supporter of. So it's, I think it's going to take us some time to get there, but there's some really cool technology right around the corner that will add tremendous value and horsepower to that industry.
So what do you do as trying to keep your mind sharp? Any sort of things you read, go to regularly to kind of get those ideas? Because really, your venture capital is one of the few industries that is really trying to look for that edge, to stay at top of the edge, to creating that white space of opportunity. So what are you doing to kind of keep that going and being part of this community that you are, the organization you're part of?
I appreciate it. I feel like my job, hours are long, but by choice. I enjoy what I do, and just staying up to date, reading some of the material that companies send to us and reading research reports are like, they really keep the mind sharp, right? They really do. And then honestly, being able to go back to that entrepreneur and ask them, right? I'm not going to challenge them because I'm not an expert, but I'm going to ask questions. And that being able to do that kind of reminds me of being in academia, except I'm, I'm not fighting for a grade. It's just having good conversation with someone that's really, really, really intelligent and smarter than I am. But I'd say that's the primary use of keeping my mind sharp. I'm a big believer in brain games, right? I play some of the more some of the apps out there like Elevate, elevate.com or elevate.io. It's neuroplasticity, sort of maintains or flexes the neuroplasticity. I think that's really, really important. I'm starting to learn Japanese a little bit, and my Japanese is super rudimentary, but that again, flexing neuroplasticity is the ultimate. Learning a new language is always difficult, but really flexes some muscles. And then the last thing is just keeping up with my wife. She is so much smarter than I am, so much smarter than I'll ever be. Hopefully our children inherit her intelligence. She is a veterinary ophthalmology resident at as I mentioned earlier, the university here, and it's incredible. She's constantly reading papers and studying for her grand rounds and presenting materials, and sometimes she'll practice those on me, and it's kind of cool to get to go through this vicariously with her. It really, and it's super relevant to what I'm doing because I'm in medtech, right?
Yeah.
A lot of times before we get a product to market, we do animal studies, and so there's overlap there. But anyway, she's awesome, and I'm fortunate enough to be married.
Well, we will make sure that this is public and she sees it, and you're a wise man because behind every good and successful man is definitely a much better woman, I'll tell you. So that's awesome. I can conclude. My wife said, why don't you mention me more on your show? Today I'm mentioning that my wife keeps me straight, and she's the whatever success I have or whatever keeping me on track, it's because of my wife.
You said it. I agree with that 100%.
All right. The one thing I'm thinking about, the hardest thing in venture capital is you're making bets. You're making calculated bets. The business model might not, great idea, timing, like how do you, what is the magic to making that right? The business model, the commercialization, and timing, if you will.
It's still trying to figure that out every day. But what I will say is it's important to have, I think there's three things that are important. Number one, you need an angle, right? So one of my former managing directors that I did an internship at a venture fund out of Chicago called Sandbox Industries, and a gentleman by the name of Matt Downs. He'd probably be surprised I still remember this, but he told me, he's like, the secret to being a good investor and making good bets is having a unique angle. So a unique competitive advantage, which is what Natera encourages us to do as well, is find companies with a unique competitive advantage. So it's not really placing a bet. It's just finding that company that has a unique and almost an unfair advantage to win in that respective market. I mean, you could do all the DD, all you want. You can you could do DD until you're blue in the face. Without
and
that,
DD, say DD, what is DD?
Oh, sorry, using these acronyms.
Dungeons and Dragons? That's D&D, I guess, sorry.
That's awesome. I'm going to use that one. Let's do some DD. Let's do some Dungeons and Dragons for the next one. No, it's due diligence, right?
Due diligence, gotcha. All right, thank you. I mean, with all fairness, there are a lot of acronyms. I know what due diligence is depending on what it is. So anyway. Yeah.
That's right. There's no secret formula to determining whether a company is going to blow up or not in a good way, right? Or be successful. But I think having that unique competitive advantage to the product is key. I think it's also important to have a good diversified portfolio, right? I think you're going to place some early bets, you place some late stage bets. We try to do that a little bit in our portfolio. We've got some early pre-revenue companies, but then we've got some more mature businesses. And then I think number three, it's the people. I can't take it away. You need really solid management teams that you know and trust. I've worked with management teams that I would totally back again because they were rock stars and they were the rocks in my portfolio. That being said, occasionally there's falling out in that management team. It turns out you were wrong. That wasn't the right bet. So I think spending quality time with management teams before placing bets, I put a lot of emphasis on that.
So that's like the jockey, the leader, and the few, whether it be the CEO, CTO, or however, the core critical leadership team is what you're mentioning, right?
That's right. Absolutely. It's not just the CEO. I think it's CEO. It's important to note. So one of the managing partners at Adam Street, he gave me some good advice early on. I'm giving lots of shout outs today for whatever reason, but he gave me a really good pointer. He's like, pay attention to the CEO in that meeting and all the people around him or her, right? If he or she is, really calling on the team for their competency, that means they trust that person. They're hiring people that are smarter than them. So a good CEO will hire people that are smarter than them, right? Not a strong CEO will hire people that make them feel smart. And that's a really, really, really important capability.
Tom, I think we're going to kind of finish off there. I'm sorry I kept you a little longer. I really appreciate it. We're going to have you on again. This has been awesome.
Thank you so much for being on. Real privilege and really big supporter of what you're doing. You're a rock star. I really appreciate your time.
Well, we're going to do it again, and we're going to do our little send off. And we're wrapping it up. So everyone, thank you so much.
Friends, it has been a great journey today on Planetary Health First, Mars Next. Follow us for more on Planetary Health First, Mars Next. Until next time, peace be with you.